todo el mundo, bienvenido a mi canal. Yo me llamo Sirey. Soy una abogada afro-latina licenciada practicando la ley criminal, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a hablar del caso de Luigi Mangione. Si quieren más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of you, has a severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen, you guys, today we're going to talk about a case that was actually the case that started this here YouTube channel. This was actually my first YouTube video ever, but I took it down because it was just tragic. The way I recorded it was just tragic. And I do think it just takes some time to get more comfortable with yourself and just talking to yourself, honestly. In this case, there are a multitude of charges at different levels of government. And something just happened. And I was like, you know what? They might be interested to hear about it. So without further ado, let's get started. This is the case of Luigi Mangione.
Breaking news, the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson is pleading not guilty. The 26-year-old suspect entered that plea in a Manhattan courtroom earlier this morning as his attorney argued her client is being treated unfairly.
He was on display for everyone to see in the biggest staged perp walk I've ever seen in my career. It was absolutely unnecessary. There was no reason for the NYPD and everybody to have these big assault rifles that, frankly, I had no idea was in their arsenal. And to have all of the press there, the media there, it was like perfectly choreographed. And what was the New York City mayor doing at this press conference, Your Honor? That just made it utterly political.
So before we get started with the video, and I know I don't like to talk about myself in these videos at all because that's not the purpose of these videos, but let's just get some preliminary matters out of the way, okay? First, I've gained a number of new subscribers from the last few videos, and I don't think I had nails on in those last few videos. And I don't know what it is about random internet trolls, but you guys really care about the status of my fingernails. It's really weird. Now, for you who are new here, you should know that I've been before municipal level judges and juries. I've been before state level judges and juries, and I've been before federal level judges and juries. And nobody cares about my nails more than a random internet troll. Relax, beloved. You'll love it here, okay? And number two, I'm finally getting settled into my new place. So the background's going to be a little bit different for the next few videos, but you know, in 2 full weeks, I think I'll have my whole setup done. So I'm really excited for the next videos that are going to come after the setup is complete. But anyways, let's get started, shall we? For those of you guys who are completely unaware, Luigi Nicholas Mangione is alleged to have shot and killed the former United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, in Midtown Manhattan on December 4th of 2024.
A chaotic scene outside this Pennsylvania courthouse as accused killer Luigi Mangione arrived for his extradition hearing and erupted in an angry outburst.
Completely out of touch and insult to the intelligence of the American people.
The suspect shackled, but a team of deputies still forcing him inside. Mangione is fighting extradition to New York, where he's facing second-degree murder charges in the assassination-style killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
It is alleged that Mr. Thompson was there to attend an investors meeting, an annual one at that, when he met his fate outside of New York Hilton in Midtown Manhattan. The shooting was actually captured on camera, and the alleged gunman is said to have taken a bus from Atlanta to New York in order to confront Mr. Thompson.
Tonight, we're seeing newly released video of the chilling moments after Luigi Mangione allegedly shot and killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a New York City hotel. You can see the shooter walk toward the victim, appearing to briefly glance down as he lay dying on the sidewalk before turning to cross the street, then starting to run, disappearing down an alley. This woman, holding her coffee, seems to hear the first shot. She flinches as Thompson stumbles, then seems to look straight at the gunman, still taking aim, before she runs off. Seconds later, a man in the hotel steps outside, looks toward Thompson crumpled on the ground, and starts pointing in the suspect's direction. But it would be 3 minutes before police arrive and tend to the CEO, another 8 minutes until an ambulance pulls up. As police launched a manhunt across the city, they allege Mangione escaped on a bike, dumped a backpack in Central Park, then hailed a taxi before he hopped a bus out of town.
Following the shooting, the gunman fled. And when officers were continuing in their investigation, they noticed that 3 spent shell casings had some very particular words on them.
We are following new developments out of New York City on the search for a gunman who shot and killed the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. NYPD executed a search warrant for a building they believe the suspect stayed in. CBS News also confirms law enforcement found shell casings at the crime scene with the words deny, defend, and depose written on them.
What was interesting to officers about these 3 words is that they were similar to a common health insurance phrase, delay, deny, and defend, which alludes to health insurance companies trying to avoid paying claims. After a nationwide search, and after 5 days, officers got a tip from a McDonald's employee who stated that the person that they believe was the suspect in the United Healthcare CEO shooting was casually eating breakfast at their location.
Blair 911, what is the address of your emergency? It's not really an emergency. I'm a manager at Plank Road McDonald's out here on the Boulevard. Okay. And I have a customer here that some other customers were suspicious of, that he looks like the CEO shooter from New York. Okay.
If I didn't say this already, the McDonald's location was in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and that's about a 3-hour drive from where the incident occurred in Manhattan. When officers arrived to the McDonald's location, they approached the suspect, who we now know is Luigi Mangione, and they asked him to identify himself. And in response to that, Luigi provided them a fake driver's license, a New Jersey one, with the name Mark Rosario on it. So after checking the driver's license, officers are said to have learned that this was a false identification, and they were able to positively identify the man in front of him as the suspect that they believed had committed the United Healthcare shooting, Luigi Mangione. So here's where things get a little bit interesting, and I'm going to try my best to do the best I can in explaining all of this to you guys. But basically, at that point, officers determined that they're going to arrest the suspect. While Luigi is inside of the restaurant and while he's dining, he has a backpack in his possession. It is my understanding, based on various news outlets that I have heard from and various articles that I have read, that the backpack belonging to Luigi was somewhere located right below the chair of the table that he was sitting in when officers approached. When officers determined that they were going to make the arrest, it is also my understanding that the officers scooted the backpack away from Luigi for their safety, is what they claim, made the arrest of Luigi, and then searched his person as well as the backpack. Luigi and his counsel were just in court for his state-level offenses, in which they argued that Luigi, 1, gave statements in violation of Miranda, and those should be suppressed, and 2, officers needed a search warrant by which to search that backpack. And because they did not obtain one prior to their search, all of the evidence seized within that backpack should be suppressed as well.
New details in the arrest of Luigi Mangione. Police body camera footage was played in court today as a pretrial hearing continues in the state case against him.
Mangione has pleaded not guilty to state and federal charges in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. His defense team wants some of the evidence and statements he made tossed out, claiming his constitutional rights were violated. Alice Gaynor was in the courtroom. Alice?
Yesterday, we saw security footage from inside the McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where Luigi Mangione was arrested, but there was no audio. Well, today, we saw a lot of police body camera footage, multiple angles, and there was audio.
Altoona police officer Joseph Detweiler testified when the call came in December 9th, 2024, quote, "There's a male in the store that looks like the NYC shooter," directing him to a McDonald's. He says he replied 10-4, semi-sarcastically, because he didn't think it would be the person of interest police were searching for. He says his supervisor texted him, quote, "If you get the New York City shooter, I'll buy you a hoagie." But Officer Detweiler told the court after responding and asking the man in the restaurant to lower his mask, quote, "I knew it was him immediately." On police body cam, we see Luigi Mangione tell the two responding officers his name was Mark Rosario and hand over a fake ID. Detweiler says, quote, "I stayed calm and then I asked him, 'Have you been to New York recently?' He searched Mangione for weapons. Mangione sat back down and ate his hash brown and a steak sandwich." The officer testified he made small talk about the food and told Mangione they were working to confirm his ID to get him out of there, to keep him calm. Holiday music playing in the restaurant can be heard in the background throughout the footage, Jingle Bell Rock and I'll Be Home for Christmas. The officer starts whistling along at one point, telling the court it was to make everything seem normal. Eventually, more law enforcement show up and Mangione's backpack is moved away out of concern for what was in it. Mangione is told, quote, "You're under official police investigation." He then gives his real name. He was asked why he lied about his name, and Mangione replies it was the ID in his wallet and confirms it's fake. Miranda warnings are then given to Mangione. Mangione is handcuffed, patted down, and searched. A jar of peanut butter was pulled out of his pocket, a case with a large amount of cash and foreign currency, rope, and a small piece of paper. The bag was then searched. Defense attorneys argue there was no warrant for the search and want evidence from the backpack left out at trial, which includes a gun, notebook, and note to the FBI. Detweiler testified the rule of the Altoona Police Department is they search everyone being arrested, their person, and bags.
Let's go ahead and get into it and let me give you all of my thoughts. Now, before we get into the arguments that were made at the pretrial hearing that I'm going to discuss with you guys, let's just talk about the charges that Luigi is facing. Okay, so it's my understanding that Luigi is facing state-level charges for 2 different states, and he is also facing federal charges. You guys might ask me, well, Desiree, how on earth can Luigi be facing state-level charges for this alleged murder, but also federal charges for this alleged murder? At what point does double jeopardy attach? And that is a phenomenal question. But the answer is, it doesn't. It doesn't. If you're dealing with 2 separate levels of government, i.e. in this case, state and federal, we're not dealing with a double jeopardy issue. Because we're dealing with 2 separate levels of government and dual sovereignty applies here, we're not dealing with the double jeopardy issue. So I say that to let you know that Luigi is properly charged for both the state and federal offenses. Let's stop right here. So what are the charges? Let me tell you. So in Pennsylvania, where he was arrested at the McDonald, so in Blair County, and on December 9th of 2024, the same day of his arrest, Luigi was charged with carrying a gun without a license, forgery, falsely identifying himself to authorities, and possessing instruments of a crime. Later that same day, Luigi was charged in Manhattan with second-degree murder, 3 counts of illegal weapons possession, and forgery. 8 days later, and on December 17th of 2024, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office indicted Luigi on some additional charges. Those charges were murder in the first degree, murder in the second degree as a crime of terrorism, murder in the second degree again, 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree under a specific subsection, and another count of the same crime, but under a different subsection. 4 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree, but all under separate subsections for separate theories. 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree, and 1 count of criminal possession of a forged instrument in the second degree. After the Manhattan District Attorney's Office added those additional charges to Luigi's state case in New York, Luigi was later charged with additional federal offenses. 2 federal counts of stalking, 1 count of murder through use of a firearm, and 1 count of a firearms offense. As I said, in relation to the New York State level offenses, Luigi was charged with 2 offenses stemming from murder as acts of terrorism. Well, on September 16th of 2025, a New York State judge dismissed those charges, stating that there was insufficient evidence to proceed as it relates to them. Now, that specific hearing wasn't televised, or at least if it was, I didn't see it. So this is my best educated guess as to how the court was able to dismiss those charges. As we've talked about numerous times before, preliminary hearings are a screening device that the court uses to determine if there is enough probable cause as to the charges that the prosecution is trying to bring forth against a particular defendant or defendants, right? So my best educated guess would be that they were in court for a preliminary hearing. They tried to argue PC as to all of the charges, and the court said, no, that just isn't sufficient, and was able to dismiss the 2 terrorism-related charges against Luigi. If you guys have more information about that, go ahead and let me know. I'll even insert a little newsy news clip, which I believe substantiates what I'm saying to you guys.
All right, another big case on the docket. The man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson just appeared in state court here in New York City for a pretrial hearing. Luigi Mangione is facing both state and federal charges, and you may remember, Brian Thompson was gunned down on a New York City street in what police called a targeted killing, and Mangione was then arrested in Pennsylvania, I think about 5 days later after a wide manhunt. CBS News senior coordinating producer for crime and public safety, Anna Schechter, is here with us. I remember going back and we were wondering where the suspect might be. It's Mangione. Now he's in this pretrial hearing today. Great to see you. What happened in the courtroom?
Well, we have a lot of news for you, just in that the judge actually threw out the most serious terrorism-related charges filed against Mangione. So now it's down to 9 counts that he faces, including second-degree murder. But this is really a blow for the prosecution. They were hoping to get conviction on these big terrorism-related charges. They made this case that Mangione was trying to incite fear amongst the public, and the judge wrote in a lengthy decision that they didn't provide adequate evidence to meet that terrorism charge. So that just happened.
Now that we have all of that out of the way, it's also my understanding that Luigi was in court relatively recently for a pretrial hearing. And at that hearing, his attorneys made some specific claims and made some specific arguments that we're going to address today. So guess who got her little handy hands on that motion? Me. And we're going to talk about what they said and my opinions on their arguments right now. Wait. And I discussed this in the first video that I talked about Luigi, but remember what I told you guys. I just removed that video because it was just so embarrassing. But Luigi's lead defense attorney is a brilliant woman by the name of Karen Agnifilo. If that last name kind of rings any bells for you or seems familiar to you, it should be, because Karen Agnifilo is married to Mark Agnifilo, and Mark Agnifilo was the lead defense attorney in Diddy's federal New York trial. But now let's go ahead and talk about the arguments that Karen is making on Luigi's behalf. Karen makes a number of arguments in her motion claiming that Luigi's constitutional rights were violated. There are only 2 arguments that we're going to spend our time focusing on today because I don't want this video to get super long. But let's carry on, shall we? So filed in Luigi's New York State court case on May 1st of 2025, Karen argues the following. A. Mr. Mangione's statements to law enforcement must be suppressed because they were unconstitutionally obtained through interrogation without Miranda warnings while Mr. Mangione was in custody. And B, all evidence recovered from Mr. Mangione's backpack must be suppressed because law enforcement failed to obtain a search warrant before searching the backpack. Before we go any further into the argument, let me just give you my brief synopsis of what I'm thinking about prior to reading anything that she says and any argument that she makes. I know we've all heard of Miranda warnings or Miranda rights or Miranda advisements or Miranda waivers or Miranda. We've heard of Miranda. We've all heard of Miranda, right? Miranda only attaches when 2 things are met. There's a custodial interrogation. I'm going to say it again. When there's a custodial interrogation. What is a custodial interrogation? Custodial. The suspect or person is in custody. interrogation, any sort of questioning that is made by law enforcement that a reasonable person could assume would be likely to elicit an incriminating response. Do we got it? Are we all on the same page here? So meaning, if law enforcement said to Luigi while he was in custody, or questioned Luigi while he was in custody as to his name, and Luigi said, "I'm so sorry, I did it. I did everything that you're claiming I did. I'm the one who shot him, blah, 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 blah." That's not a Miranda violation, because who would reasonably assume that by asking this man his name, you would get a full-out confession? Does that make sense? If, on the other hand, law enforcement was asking Luigi some questions that are likely to elicit an incriminating response, and Luigi responded in kind with an incriminating response, and there was no Miranda warning given and no Miranda waiver applied, that's a problem. So that's my first thoughts as to that section. Let's talk about section 2, or argument number 2. So the argument is that law enforcement needed a search warrant to search Luigi's backpack. Again, my first impressions, without even seeing what Karen's argument is that is fallacious. And let me explain to you why. There is a very, 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 very well-known and very well-established principle in the law. That is the principle of searches incident to lawful arrests. And what that means is, if the police are arresting Luigi and his backpack is in his possession, they may then search it. Period. No warrant needed. Period. Right? There are multiple other exceptions by which the police may search his backpack without a search warrant as well. Let's get into that, but let me explain just a little bit more about how searches incident to arrest work. It's my understanding that Luigi was at the McDonald's location. He was seated. Next to his seat was his backpack on the floor. When officers determined that he was not the person he claimed to have been in the false identification that was provided, he got up, officers put him in handcuffs, and they scooted his backpack over, and they said it was for officer safety. After they placed him in cuffs and arrest him, they then search his backpack. Would I argue, or would an argument be made, that that was a lawful search incident to arrest? I think that's a valid argument. Absolutely, yes. Because even though the backpack was not on his person, it was in his possession. It was in his possession. It was right there next to the chair that he got up at before they arrested him. Period. That's argument number 1. Let's assume I'm wrong. And the court's like, Desiree, that argument will not fly here. We are New York, and that's just not going to happen. I'd be like, okay, judge, here's argument number 2 as to why the officers did have reason to search his backpack without a warrant. Exigent circumstances existed. And I think that's what the officers were saying here. This is what that means. It means, judge, we had reason to believe that this person was the suspect in a recent murder. For officer safety, and just for the destruction of the evidence that might be in this backpack, we had to search. So that's what we did, to not only keep ourselves safe, but to make sure that the destruction of evidence could not happen. That would be argument number 2. So in the multitude of different arguments that I'm just thinking of in my head, I cannot find a reason why officers would have needed a search warrant to search that backpack with the facts as we know them to be. Does that make sense? I will give you another example of how I feel a warrant might be needed in this same circumstance, but switching the facts just a smidge. Let's assume Luigi was arrested in the McDonald's, and let's assume that his backpack is 5 blocks down the street in a car that he drove. At that point, I'd be like, yeah, no, what? How are you going to claim that search incident to arrest? How is it in his possession when it's 5 blocks down the street? Do you know what I'm saying? So I think, like, given the facts as I believe them to have occurred here, or as they've been stated to have occurred here, I think that the officers properly did their jobs. Now, you might ask me, well, Desiree, then why on earth did defense file these motions? I don't blame them. I think it's proper to file a motion when you feel like there might be an issue. But also, in such a high-profile case as this one, you have to whip and turn and do everything you possibly can to help and defend your client. So even if there's just a smidge of any hope that an argument can be made and would be accepted by the court to help and possibly get rid of some of the evidence against your client, it's your obligation to make the argument. I'm not saying it's going to go far, but I'm saying you have a legal obligation, and an ethical one, actually, not legal, sorry, to make the argument on behalf of your client. But let's actually go into what Karen says, okay? For Miranda purposes, interrogation refers to any questioning or actions by law enforcement officers that are reasonably likely to elicit an incriminating response from a suspect. In this case, when Patrolman Detweiler initially approached Mr. Mangione, he already believed that he was the New York shooter. When asking Mr. Mangione if he had been to New York recently, Patrolman Detweiler was seeking to elicit an incriminating response. This question was obviously important enough that Patrolman Detweiler asked it numerous times, including after telling another officer that he was 100% sure that Mr. Mangione matched the New York suspect. In asking this question, Patrolman Detweiler knew it was likely to elicit an incriminating response because there was nothing about their interaction or being in McDonald's that related to New York other than the shooting. Okay, that's a crafty argument that Karen made. I follow it, but I don't agree with it. And here's why. It's my understanding that when they approached Luigi in the McDonald's, sure, they believed him to be the shooter, but he wasn't in custody at that point. What did I just say? And what did Karen just re-articulate for you? Miranda is only applicable when there is a custodial interrogation. Let's assume I am wrong, because I'm trying to give you every facet of every argument that can be made here. So let's assume that I am wrong. And let's assume that the court finds that Luigi was in custody at that point, and that the patrolman asking that question, if they had been to New York in a certain period of time, or if he had been to New York in a certain period of time, was a question that was likely to elicit an incriminating response. Let's assume that is true. I don't really remember how Luigi responded other than no. If I were on that case, and let's assume that I was a prosecution on that case, what I would do is confess the statement. And what that means is, I'd be like, okay, judge, we're not necessarily confessing that the patrolman made an error by asking this question, but it's self-serving hearsay. The fact that he said, no, I wasn't in New York is of no moment to me. It's no moment to the prosecution. It's no moment to my case. So I will confess that statement, and let's bada boom, bada bing, let's move on with our lives and our days. Do you know what I'm saying? But as it stands right now, and as the facts are right now, I don't believe that argument holds much water, because I don't believe he was in custody at the time the question was asked. Let me know your thoughts down below, though, okay? Because this is getting really interesting. Let's go on to argument number 2. There were no exigent circumstances allowing law enforcement to search Mr. Mangione's backpack without a search warrant. There can be no disagreement that at the time law enforcement started searching Mr. Mangione's backpack, he was in handcuffs and surrounded by police officers while the backpack was approximately 6 feet away from him. Moreover, even before Mr. Mangione's arrest, the backpack was not within his immediate control or grabbable area because Patrolman Detweiler had quickly moved it to another table approximately 6 feet away, roughly 9 minutes earlier, and there was a human wall of police officers strategically standing between Mr. Mangione and the backpack. In addition, even before the arrest, the scene was police controlled as there were 10 or more officers in the back of the McDonald's. Nevertheless, despite the lack of any exigency, officers began searching through his backpack while inside McDonald's. There was certainly no exigency once Mr. Mangione was removed from McDonald's, yet law enforcement continued to search the backpack in the restaurant without a warrant. Under New York law, this search was illegal, and the contents of the backpack must be suppressed. Again, I think this was a valiant argument made by defense, but I don't agree. Now, these are just my initial opinions and my initial thoughts. I don't know how the court is going to rule, but I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, by anything in this case, quite frankly. When the court makes its ruling, we can talk about the case again at that point. But for right now, go ahead and let me know all of your thoughts and your opinions down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, y'all take care.